Hello and welcome to the explanatory webinar to accompany the Fall 2021 Dataset Distribution to Educator Preparation Programs. This pre-recorded webinar provides explanatory notes on the datasets which are being distributed to EPPs here in October 2021. I'm your presenter, Mark Olofson. I'm the Director of Educator Data, Research, and Strategy here at the Texas Education Agency. My division has worked to put together the datasets which have been distributed. As a reminder, as an educator preparation program, your main point of contact at TEA is your assigned specialist. Their contact information is here on the screen, and you can always file a help desk ticket with your questions. Today's topic includes three different data sets that have been distributed: the Principal Survey Dataset, the Teacher Survey Dataset, and the Indicator 3 dataset. I will also provide a few notes at the end. By the end of this webinar, you should understand the contents of these datasets. It is important to note, if you did not receive one or more of these data sets, it is because your EPP had no candidates that were included. The dataset distribution is part of our continued effort to help support EPPs with moving up in your data use. Our hope is that we are able to support growth to use data, not only for accreditation and compliance, but also to monitor and report on your processes, and to help you engage in transformational efforts at your EPP. From our end, we can support you with new data products, including these sets. As we have noted in the EPP newsletter, we also have forthcoming the EPP Insight to Impact dashboards. While we are still a number of months away from those dashboards, we wanted to provide this data to you today. Let's take a look. The first sets I would like to describe are the two survey data sets. There are two sets. The first is for the Principal Survey data, which contains the Principal Survey responses from the 2020-2021 academic year that are associated with your EPP. The file contains all the associated data. Similarly, the Teacher Survey data set contains all the Teacher Survey responses from the 2020-2021 teacher surveys. As a reminder, EPPs had the opportunity to validate all these survey rosters this summer. The attached datasets now contain all the data. These sets differ from the publicly posted data in one important way. They include the TEA ID for the teacher or candidate. This information will allow you to contextualize these responses within your own program. Additionally, these datasets include certificate information. Please note that this certificate information may not be all the certificates held by the teacher. There is also limited demographic information included and the district identifier. When we discuss the principal or teacher survey, we frequently get questions about who is included in the survey. While the information is included in the ASEP manual, as a reminder, the principal survey is collected about all candidates in their first year of teaching on any certificate. This means that candidates on an intern certificate are included. Principals complete this survey through ECOS. The teacher survey is collected from all teachers teaching in their first year after receiving a standard certificate. This does not include interns. Teachers themselves complete this survey in Qualtrics. These datasets, without the TEA IDs, are posted to the program provider webpage. Also on that webpage are links to the questions on the survey. If you wish to take a deeper dive, I suggest reviewing the questions. Sometime this winter, the public-facing EPP dashboards will be updated with this survey data. We hope that you find this data useful as it provides perspective from principals and teachers alike. The next data set includes data that is a preview of the Student Growth Indicator. The calculations and method for the Student Growth Indicator were adopted by the State Board for Educator Certification back in 2020. Let's take a look at that model and then talk through the data. The Student Growth Indicator uses the measures of student growth that are calculated from the STAR exams. This measure is a simplified measure that is a 0 for students who decrease proficiency level from one year to the next, a 0.5 for students who maintain, and a 1 for students who meet expected or accelerated growth. The value is determined at the individual level, which we then aggregate to the teacher level. At the teacher level, we average all the growth scores and multiply by 100 to provide a number on a 0 to 100 scale. The current performance expectation in the individual framework is a 50, which corresponds with the average student in the classroom maintaining proficiency. Conceptually, this means that for the average student in the classroom, they maintain their performance level. We then aggregate these beginning teachers up to the EPP level. We calculate the percentage of the teachers with scores who met the individual performance expectation. The standard for EPPs adopted by the SBEC is that 70% of included teachers from the EPP meet the individual standard. In this 2018-2019 data, which is the first year of data that we thoroughly ran, the statewide performance is 78% of included teachers meeting the standard. Every demographic group meet that threshold in the current model. When the SBEC was adopting the model, a number of strengths were identified in this approach. By using the growth data that is used in the K-12 accountability model, we're further situating this indicator in the larger educational ecosystem and aligning with statewide performance expectations for students. By using the stable growth indicator, it allows for longitudinal analysis by EPPs, which we hope will support continuous improvement efforts, allowing you to compare data year after year. Just a few final notes about the work that went into this indicator, since some of you may be seeing it for the first time. This indicator was built through over 2 years of collaboration. TEA researched prior attempts in industry standards to find best practices, and we established an Indicator 3 work group with varied stakeholders. We then created the model using available data within the statewide accountability system and ran a pilot of the model to generate data. We analyzed data sets and troubleshooted the model and addressed stakeholder concerns, finalized our method, and recommended that method and standard to the SBEC. As part of that adoption process, the SBEC amended implementation recommendations amid our COVID-19 reality. One of those main things that the SBEC did was to create a timeline for the implementation of this indicator. As noted, the data being distributed was student growth data generated in the 2018-2019 academic year. It is being distributed to EPPs for informational purposes only. The SBEC requires 2 report-only years that have to happen after the 2019-2020 academic year. That means that there will be 2 more years where this data will be reported to EPPs without it being consequential for ACEP. With interruptions to start testing, we think that the first year of report-only data will be based on the 2021-2022 academic year, which will be distributed to EPPs in fall or winter of 2022. The second report-only year, then, we anticipate as being the 2022-2023 reporting year. And finally, if everything goes well, the growth data collected in 2024 would be the first Indicator 3 data used as part of the accountability system. It is our hope that this multi-year rollout will give EPPs, TEA, and the SBEC the opportunity to view these data and incorporate them into our work. A little more about the sample. Teachers in their first 3 years of teaching are included. Only teachers with students with growth scores are included, and for the 2018-2019 year, that meant students with math or reading growth scores, as those were the only ones present. You should receive information for candidates that were recommended for certification by your EPP. As a reminder, complete information about the sample and the calculation are available in the ACEP manual. The data set is relatively straightforward. Included in the data set is the TEA ID, certificate information. Note again that this may not be all the certificates held by the teacher. Also, limited demographic information, and finally, the average growth score of the students on that 0 to 100 scale, where a 50 or better meets the individual standard. Finally, a few notes. If you do not have a local file that contains your candidate TEA IDs, or the names of your candidates related to their TEA ID, you can retrieve their information from the TEA ID in ECOS. This is located in ECOS under the File Transfer menu. Second, while we welcome feedback about the structure of these data sets, this data will not be reissued. If you have suggestions for process improvement, please let us know, and we'll be happy to see about incorporating them into future years. At this time, no additional workshops or webinars are planned related to this data. Further information is included in the ACEP manual. Finally, and this is important, you have no required action steps related to this data. It is provided for informational purposes only. Finally, we had discussed distributing 5 years worth of employment data to EPPs along with these data sets. However, those data sets are much larger and quite a bit more complex. They're also not related to indicators or systems with which you may be familiar, and require an understanding of the PEAM system to utilize. We don't have the capacity at this time to provide direct support to EPPs for making use of these data sets, and we didn't want to provide something that might cause greater confusion. Finally, employment data is something that we plan on dashboarding for EPPs in the near future. Now, all that said, if you would like to request these 5-year employment data sets, please email me a request and we can send it along. Just send me an email. It's our hope that this data might be of use to your program as you engage in monitoring or continuous improvement efforts. As we work to further democratize the access to data for our EPPs, this distribution is an intermediary step. As always, we appreciate your partnership in preparing educators for the state of Texas. Thanks again for viewing.